Today, we are going to dive deep into the work of a truly fascinating psychologist, Alfred Adler. We're going to unpack his ideas and see if we can uncover a kind of psychological blueprint for understanding ourselves, what drives us, why we are the way we are, and yeah, why your birth order might matter a whole lot more than you think. Let's get into it.
So, let's start with this, because it's a feeling we all know, right? That little voice in the back of your head, that constant nagging pressure to do more, to be more, to prove you're good enough. At work, at home, even in your hobbies. Well, for Alfred Adler, understanding that single, universal feeling was the key to unlocking everything else. Now, Adler called his whole approach individual psychology. And I know that name is a little misleading. It sounds like he's just studying people by themselves in isolation. But for Adler, individual actually meant indivisible. You can't understand a person by chopping them up into little pieces like ego or instinct. You have to look at the whole person, a single, unified being, and figure out their fundamental approach to life.
So, where does that need to prove ourselves even come from? Well, Adler had a pretty radical idea. He said it all starts with a universal feeling of inferiority. Now, hold on. That sounds negative, but for Adler, it wasn't a weakness at all. In fact, it's totally normal. Think about it. We all start out as small, helpless babies, completely dependent on others. That feeling of being less than is the starting line for every single human being. It's the spark that lights the fire for everything we ever achieve. This spark kicks off what he called the great upward drive. It's a really simple, powerful idea. We start off feeling this sense of inferiority. That's the minus state. And that feeling creates this powerful internal engine that drives us to get to a plus state. We're constantly striving, pushing, and growing. And what's the ultimate goal? What are we striving for? A sense of perfection, of feeling whole and complete. Okay, but here's where we all face a critical choice. It's like a fork in the road. How do we go about this striving? Path 1 is the destructive route, striving for personal superiority. This is about being better than other people, about dominating and winning at their expense. Adler said this path leads straight to neurosis and psychological problems. Then there's path 2, the constructive one, striving for perfection. This isn't about beating others. It's about improving yourself and working with others. And the one thing that separates these two paths? It's a concept Adler called social interest. This quote from him really gets to the heart of it. Social interest is that innate part of us that wants to cooperate, to contribute, and to build a better community for everyone. It's the feeling that we're all in this together. For Adler, the amount of social interest you have was the true measure of your mental health. So, how does this all come together in a person? Through what Adler called our style of life. Think of it as your personal blueprint, your unique and consistent strategy for navigating the world and going after your goals. And get this. Adler believed that the basic framework for this style of life is built in the first 4 or 5 years of your childhood. But wait, if it's all formed so early, are we just stuck? Absolutely not. And this is probably the most empowering part of Adler's entire theory. He gave us the idea of the creative self. And this quote says it all. You see, Adler believed that we aren't just passive victims of our childhood, we are active creators. We take the raw materials of our life and we interpret them, we shape them, we build our own personality. We are the artists. So if we're the artists, what are the raw materials we're working with? Well, according to Adler, one of the biggest factors is what he called your family constellation. So just think for a second, where do you fit in? Are you the oldest, the middle child, the baby of the family, or an only child? Because Adler was convinced this had a huge impact on the blueprint for your style of life. Let's start with the firstborn. If this is you, you began life as the king or queen of the castle. You had all the attention. And then, boom, a younger sibling arrives and suddenly you're dethroned. Adler thought this experience gives firstborns a deep, lasting understanding of power and rules. They often grow up to be conservative, respect authority, and are driven to achieve great things, always trying to reclaim that #1 spot. Now, if you're the second child, you were born into a totally different world. You've had a competitor from day one. Your older sibling is like a pacemaker, always just a little bit ahead of you. This, Adler said, tends to make second children incredibly ambitious and competitive. They're constantly striving to catch up or even surpass their older sibling, which can sometimes push them to set incredibly high, even unrealistic goals for themselves. Then we have the youngest child, often the baby of the family. They usually get a ton of attention and are often pampered. But Adler saw a potential pitfall here.
If you're always taken care of, you can become overly dependent on others, and that dependency can sometimes get in the way of your own ambition when you grow up.
And finally, the only child. You never had to compete for attention. You were the undisputed center of your parents' world. The challenge for an only child often comes later in life when they step out into the world and realize, sometimes with a bit of a shock, that not everyone else sees them as the center of the universe. That can be a tough adjustment. Now, you might be thinking, okay, this is fun, but is there any proof? Well, it's kind of fascinating how these patterns sometimes show up in the real world. Take a look at this. Research has shown that a disproportionate number of U.S. presidents have been firstborns. It fits perfectly with Adler's theory, doesn't it? The dethroned monarch striving to get back to a position of ultimate power and authority. It really makes you think. So you take our innate drive, you mix in our family experiences, and you filter it all through our own creative self. And what you get is our finished personality blueprint. Adler suggested that most of us fall into one of 4 general lifestyle types. The catch? 3 of them are ultimately unhealthy, while only 1 represents a truly healthy way of living. And if you look at the table, the dividing line is crystal clear. It's all about social interest. The ruling type wants to dominate. The getting type is passive and dependent. The avoiding type runs away from problems to avoid failure. All 3 have very low social interest. They're primarily concerned with themselves. But then you have the socially useful type. These are the people with high social interest. They face challenges head-on with courage, and they do it through cooperation and a genuine desire to contribute to others. For Adler, this was the picture of a healthy, thriving human being. Which brings us right back to the most important question that Adler's work leaves us with. Your past, your feelings, they're all just the raw materials. That blueprint from your childhood is not a life sentence. You always have the creative power to pick up the tools and reshape it. So think about it. How are you using your own unique blueprint right now? Are you striving just for yourself, or are you striving to contribute? In the end, Adler's most powerful message is that you are the artist. The masterpiece is up to you.